It started with a scream. Not mine, but a squirrel's, shrieking like it had just seen the apocalypse. I stumbled outside, coffee splashing down my robe, and stopped dead. My neighbour Karen, in designer heels and a smug grin, was swinging a gas-powered chainsaw like she was auditioning for a horror movie, shredding my 15-foot privacy hedges. Hedges my grandfather planted decades ago. Those hedges weren't just plants. They were home to birds, squirrels, a sassy rabbit, and the only thing keeping Karen's morning yoga sessions from invading my living room through her wide-open curtains. She was yelling about her right to sunlight and street aesthetics as branches flew and roots splintered, chunks of greenery piling up around her like a crime scene. Half my hedge was gone before I could even blink. Those hedges were my boundary, my peace, and Karen had just declared war with a chainsaw. I shouted for her to stop, my voice shaking with disbelief. She paused, smirked like a Bond villain, and said she was helping because my hedges blocked her view of the street, as if she owned the whole neighbourhood. I pointed out they were well within my property line, but she shrugged and said, "They feel like they're on mine." Behind her, a rental truck idled, stenciled with precision landscaping. She'd hired a crew to destroy my property without so much as a text, let alone a knock. The audacity was staggering. I fumbled for my phone to call the police, but they brushed it off as a civil matter and told me to file a report. By then, the landscapers were tossing my mangled hedges into the truck like they were covering up a heist. Karen waved, chirped, "You're welcome," and strutted back to her gaudy mansion, probably to toast herself with a mimosa. I stood there, staring at the gaping hole where my privacy used to be, now forced to see her tacky floral wallpaper and gold-plated kitchen clock. I didn't want that view. I didn't need that view. Rage simmered in me, but I didn't scream or storm her porch. I decided to fight smarter. I marched to the neighbourhood council office, hoping for justice. The president, Tannen, a man who looked like he'd aged a decade in his volunteer role, sighed and said Karen called the hedges an eyesore that hurt community vibes. He slid over the bylaws, but they said nothing about her so-called rights. Worse, she'd tapped community funds to cover part of her chainsaw stunt, claiming it was for beautification. I'd been fined last year for wind chimes, yet she got reimbursed for vandalism. This wasn't just a neighbour spat, it was a power grab, and I was done being her doormat. I spent days researching, fueled by coffee and spite. The hedges were 2 feet inside my property line, listed as an approved privacy barrier in my zoning agreement. Karen had broken laws, destruction of private property, unlicensed landscaping, misuse of funds. A lawsuit could work, but it wouldn't hit her where it hurt. Her ego. She'd crossed my boundary with a chainsaw and 0 consequences, thinking she ruled the block. I decided to build something she couldn't touch. A 15-foot city-approved wall, elegant but unyielding, designed to block her view, her control, and her smugness forever. I played the long game. For weeks, I let Karen gloat, waving politely when she walked her yappy dog or bragged about her open view. She'd sneer at the hedge stumps, unaware I was studying zoning codes, fence laws, and wind resistance standards. I hired a designer to craft a wall that was tasteful yet infuriatingly permanent. Stone on my side, smooth concrete on hers. When the cement mixer rolled in, Karen charged out in her athleisure, phone in hand, demanding, "What's this?" I handed her a laminated permit and smiled. "Just replacing what was stolen." Her face twitched as she scanned the bulletproof paperwork. She muttered about her cousin at City Hall. I shrugged and said I'd already checked. He'd been fired for shady deals. As the first rebar went up, her smirk faded, and I felt the tide turning. Construction was a show. The mixer's rumble toppled her precious lawn gnomes, and my crew's leader, Veronica, a no-nonsense woman, brushed off Karen's tantrums like they were background noise. Karen tried everything. Summoning council members, snapping photos, threatening to call regulators. Nothing worked. I'd found a rare rule allowing tall privacy structures if natural barriers were destroyed. Karen's chainsaw had unlocked my right to build higher than a standard fence. The irony was delicious, and she knew it. Neighbors started slowing down to watch, some nodding, others whispering their own Karen horror stories. Her bullying over ponds, mailboxes, even mulch colors. I wasn't just building a wall, I was building a rebellion. Karen fought back, staging a theatrical council meeting in the street, flanked by golf carts and folding chairs like a suburban protest. In a pink power suit, she ranted about my wall's visual oppression, claiming it stressed her dog and tanked property values. She said, "community" a dozen times, even faking a tear. The council barely passed a vote to review my wall under a vague nuisance rule, and she handed me a cease construction notice with a smirk. I took it, nodded, and went inside. She didn't know the council had no power over city-approved structures. My lawyer, Tasha, sent a cease and desist letter to the council, copying the city and local news for kicks. Karen's next move? A hand-painted wall of shame sign on my lawn, complete with a devil-horned cartoon of me. I laughed so hard, I nearly choked. Then came a game changer. A surveyor I hired found Karen's new fence was 3 feet onto my land. Her garden expansion was trespassing. I filed an encroachment notice, flipping her tactics on her. The city inspected her property, citing her for the fence and unauthorized fund use. Her reputation started to crack. She retaliated with an LED screen on her lawn, flashing "prison wall" in red and yellow, followed by a slideshow of my wall with captions like "concrete bully." At 7 a.m., a war documentary-style narration blared, whining about her lost sunshine to fake violin music. It was so absurd I suspected she'd hired a voice actor. Her final stunt? A wall awareness brunch, serving mimosas and ranting about fence fascism on a whiteboard. A kid filmed it, and the video went viral with 400,000 views, dubbed Berlin Blockade Karen. Even her allies turned, annoyed by her chaos spilling into their lives. Behind the scenes, I was digging deeper. With Tasha and supportive neighbors, I compiled a report on Karen's financial schemes, using community funds for personal landscaping, power washing, even party rentals, all labeled beautification. We sent it to the city's oversight office with an ethics complaint. Inspectors raided the council office, interviewing board members while Karen panicked from her window. Her LED screen went dark, her blinds stayed shut, and her reign unraveled. The council was fined, Karen was ordered to repay funds, and the board was restructured under outside oversight. Her fence was moved, her influence was gone, and her reputation was toast. In court, Karen's emotional distress lawsuit was a flop. She claimed my wall ruined her mornings and her dog's digestion, presenting grainy photos and a therapist's note. I countered with footage of her chainsaw rampage, her voice bragging, "What's he gonna do? Sue me for leaves?" Plus proof of her encroachment and fund misuse. The judge flinched at her blaring narration video, dismissed her case, and awarded me damages for the hedges, delays, and legal fees. Karen stormed out, her heels clicking defeat. The news spread fast on the neighborhood forum, with neighbors laughing, confessing their own Karen run-ins, and thanking me for ending her reign. I wasn't done. When the council's office lease ended due to fines, I teamed up with neighbors to buy the property at auction. We turned it into a peace and wellness center for gardening workshops and meditation, with a hedge preservation seminar as a quiet jab. A sign outside read, "Respect starts with boundaries." Karen saw it, pacing and snapping photos, but she was powerless. My wall was complete. Vines curling up its stone, a trickling fountain adding calm. I added a plaque facing her side. "Good fences make great neighbors." She stared at it one morning, silent, then painted her side a sloppy blue. Maybe it was surrender, maybe defiance. I didn't care. The neighborhood transformed. People waved, shared herbs, planned block parties. The council became transparent, with rotating roles and open books. Karen's yard grew weedy, her gnomes vanished, her voice faded. She'd thought a chainsaw gave her power, but I showed her boundaries win with patience, permits, and community. The wall wasn't just stone, It was a monument to peace reclaimed. As I watched the sun set behind it, vines glowing green, I felt gratitude. Not for the fight, but for the lesson. Chaos doesn't need shouting. It needs strategy, brick by brick. What's the wildest neighbor drama you've faced? Drop it in the comments, and let's see who's got a story crazier than Karen's chainsaw conspiracy.